Good afternoon, everyone. So, our distinguished ladies and gentlemen, eminent personalities in the room, and permit me, as they say, to stand on existing protocols. My name is Chinasa Collins Ogbo, and I'm moderating this panel session, which I believe would be illuminating by the time we're done. I have a distinguished lineup of experts in their respective fields who will be talking to cultivating technology driven solutions for agribusiness. But before I go into the conversation, I think that it's important to highlight why this is important. We're all here because everybody in here is um, affected by agriculture. As long as you're eating, then definitely you need to be part of this conversation. Whether you're an expert, a farmer, or you work in the industry, it's an important conversation to have. And we're trying to understand the role technology can play to address the challenges that we find within the sector. So recently, I was at a press conference by the Small Scales Women Farmers of Nigeria. And there was a chant that they kept reading, and it was no woman, no woman farmer, no food, no nation. And as simple as that sounded, it was also very powerful. And it resonated with me because it was especially highlighting the role of women in the agri space. So majority of the smallholder farmers in Nigeria are women, and they're responsible for over 70% of the food production, but they have challenges. And that means that that also can impact on food security if they're not able to provide at the capacity that they should to produce. And then it means that we don't get food to it. So I will not take a lot of time. We have very limited time to unpack this conversation. So what I will do is start with my one of my panelists that works in the banking sector, Kudzai. I know that when Lele was talking about farmers in the room, I saw that you raised your hand. Sorry, before you to speak, just press the button. And yes. So, as a farmer and in your role as the head of agri within a financial institution, women are usually the most excluded when it comes to agriculture and in terms of access to finance. So the organization that I work with, they have a survey that has shown that women are the most excluded financially compared to men at about 41%. And if we know that smallholder farmers are largely women, how are you as an institution addressing that issue in a sustainable and profitable manner, understanding their nuanced challenges? Yes.
Um, so financing, especially to smallholder agriculture, is a number of challenges. And the challenges are premised on the land tenure systems that are prevalent in Africa in general. Some of our customs don't allow women to own land, and some of our women, usually, they are the most advantaged in terms of education. Um, so those challenges.
Can you let it face?
Can you hear me?
Maybe move close. His pressed there. Did you press?
So most of the challenges that are faced by women are almost twice the challenges that are faced by men. But not only that, these women, when they are in agriculture, they are usually in smallholder farming, which in itself already has challenges in accessing financing. So it's really a double problem. But I always say most of the solutions, I'll say if you have one problem, you have more than 10 solutions to that problem. So those are opportunities for business. One thing that we are doing as a bank is to use the aggregator model to reach women, to reach the youth, especially in agriculture. And if we are, as a bank, are to reach or to engage the farmer on a one-to-one basis, it's going to be very expensive and unprofitable for us. So what we usually do is we take the likes of Babangona that Kola talked about,
Okay.
and we work with them. We give loans to the aggregators. The aggregators buy fertilizers in bulk. buy chemicals in bulk, and also give extension services to these farmers. And they off-take the produce that the farmers have. And when they do that, they are solving a number of the pain points that prevents banks from giving loans to farmers. One, as a bank, I'm giving a loan to Babangona, which is one entity. So it's cheaper for me, it is scale for me. And at the same time, as a bank, I'm now able to deploy inclusive banking products to those farmers. Through agency banking, Babangona becomes a master agent for me, and we actually have bulk acquisitions of the farmers under the Babangona model. And it's not only Babangona, there are a number of such entities that we are actually financing. So you find that with that, women are able to get financing because they don't have to provide the collateral that is required. It's actually done with Babangona. They don't have to be educated for them to access because Babangona solves those problems. In terms of transportation of inputs, they are readily transported by Babangona. And Babangona also would actually make sure that the inputs that are being provided are quality, unadulterated inputs to the farmers. The farmers get those inputs on time, which means they planned on time. They can also layer mechanization services to these farmers. At the end of the day, the farmer, when they produce, they've got a ready market because they can just deliver to Babangona. And you find that there will also be lower post-harvest losses that the farmers have because Babangona has got storage spaces that come in. And when they sell, if a farmer is to sell on the open market, there are a lot of middlemen in between who then give farmers very low prices. Babangona, for instance, the farmers under the scheme are getting 38% better prices than ordinary farmers who would sell on the open market. So the solving of these problems enable women and the youth to access financing and also make them earn better returns on their on their crops. And as a bank, we are able to reach them through digital platforms, agency banking, USSD platforms where they can actually open accounts and uh, be included in the banking system. So I believe that's the way to go currently to enable especially smallholder farmers and women to access financing. For them to go on a one-to-one basis, it will be difficult. I think His Excellency noted the difficulty that he as a person with his stature he had difficulties in access financing because it's a straitjacket with minimum requirement criteria. Risk acceptance criteria is almost uniform throughout the world. So you have to do that in a way that unlocks all that logjam. And I believe we found a winning formula which is sustainable and scalable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kudzai. That was very insightful. And just to summarize, what I hear you say is that you work with other organizations like a Babangona to obviously circumvent the risk that you can't take directly as a financial institution, and that also prevents these groups of people from getting access. So Babangona understands the needs of these segments and is able to address the issues that you can't address as a financial institution. And by that way, they're able to get access to finance, correct?
Yes, so you find that it's a win-win situation for everybody. Babangona is making a profit, the bank is making a profit,
Absolutely.
the farmer is making a profit. It's easier for the bank to reach the farmer, to reach Babangona. Babangona is ability to get financing. And we now are even getting other organizations to join in, like we're working with MasterCard Foundation, which gave a $26 million facility where ordinarily if you were going to ask to finance the farmers would not have been able to do that. But because it's sort of a grant, we are
So
able
it's
to actually
risk-free.
on lend it to the aggregators to then on lend to the farmers.
Fantastic.
So it's a win-win situation, and it's enabling to unlock a lot of resources to on lend to farmers. And that facility comes at 9%, which is a rare thing currently in the market. So,
Thank
okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Kudzai. And perfect. Okay, here's some people clapping. 9%. I know that in our current market, that's really low. It's single digit rate. But then the question is it still affordable to the groups of people that need the financing? And I'll come to you, Mecca. Um, Premier Seeds, right? Okay. So based on what Kudzai has talked about and in your interaction with these farmers because of the work that you do, the approach that the bank is taking, do you see it working perfectly for these farmers? Does it give them the opportunity that they need to scale and to be able to produce at the level that they need to be producing at?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked a lot about financing and the importance of it. And Baba started by saying you first need your land, and then after that you need the financing. So yes, all these solutions are important, and they do help farmers. I think one of the critical things that has been highlighted here is it's not just what you need; it's also how you use it and how you deploy it. We talk a lot about smallholder farmers, and that concept imagines somebody who has perhaps an acre or 2 acres of land, cultivating it, which is the basic definition. Um, Deploying capital to that level of smallholder is inefficient. If you imagine the vastness of the country and the challenging infrastructure. One of the last speakers talked about government intervening in rural road networks.
Yeah.
So that gives you the impression that it's really it's almost impossible to solve the problem by going to that micro level. So it already has been mentioned the use of cooperatives, for instance. Another way we look at it in prime agro seeds is we look at it as cluster farming. So we have done a couple of programs. The first one was a bit small scale. It was 5 states. I think about 5 farmers in each state where we provided them with our seeds as kind of a trial, but it's a form of financing. If you're successful, you can pay it back. If you're not, then we benefit at least from the experience and the data. Um, so that was that first program we ran it in 2022. Uh, I would say that the output of that program honestly was a failure, but the program was a success because we learned a lot. And one of the things that we learned is that you cannot really support farmers at an individual level. So you have to group them together. And so when we partnered with an extension service company, and basically they were our agents or our partners on the ground, it improved a lot the success of or the outcome. When I mean outcome, we talk about it in yield and the yield improvements that you get. We're now running a second program with the Tomato Growers Association. And now you're talking about 500,000 to 1 million farmers in a cooperative. It's a lot more efficient because we're dealing directly with the heads of the association. It's a lot easier for us to get the data that we need to improve on our own breeding programs. And clearly, when we have the winning varieties identified, I can imagine that folks like Zai and his bank will have confidence in lending and funding those type of programs through cooperatives. So in my humble opinion, I think we need to do more in cluster farming or cooperative farming than at individual level, and then these solutions will work because you then can pull the resource, you can pull the funds, but you don't just need the money. You need access to good quality inputs. You need access to good quality chemicals. You need extension services. You need consultancy. You are more successful when you pull the infrastructure together. You can deploy things like solar pumps, and it is a lot more manageable and therefore a lot more successful when you actually go down that route. And then when you talk about improving on farming, you need to we need to get a lot better at harvesting our data and using our data. Our speakers here are also from the data side, and it's almost impossible to harvest good enough data when you try to deal at micro level. So I think yes, it works when you actually deploy it in the right way, and
The
in
right
our
way.
view, it is when you actually aggregate these farmers.
Thank you so much, Mecca. And I couldn't agree more with you, especially your point about supporting at group level. And even in the work that I do, what we find within the financial services ecosystem, within the informal groups, which is where the smallholder farmers exist, is the power of groups. So the village savings groups, the cooperatives, etc., is what's driving that inclusion. And so if other actors can start to look at that in terms of their communal nature and leverage that. Thank you very much. So I'll come to you, Akin. So speaking about we situated the context. We know that it's smallholder farmers. They're likely to be women, etc. And in terms of technology and looking at mobile connectivity and where these people exist, we know that there's still the challenge of rural connectivity. What is the role that mobile connectivity plays in contributing to a sustainable agricultural future, or as Baba has said, agribusiness future in Nigeria?
Please confirm you can hear me. You can.
Yes, I can.
Okay, I think, well, not that I think, I mean, I do know the role that telecoms and communications and connectivity plays in farming. You've used the word smallholder farmer. That word has come through quite a lot today. There are easily about 40 million from statistics telling us about that. A large number of them women, and a large number of them, even a larger number in far remote areas. So I think for me, communications and connectivity plays a very, very major role in enabling sustainable agriculture. And then we ask the question, how does that happen? So communications, connectivity starts off with, they are businesses in agribusiness. So, and the challenges are access to information, just like any other business in retail and otherwise. Communication allows them to get information all the way from the supply side through to the demand side. So information on weather, pests, best practices, um, grants, information made available by the federal government and everything else. So there's just access to information that comes through from them. And then access to market linkages. So getting through to the market expansion. I mean, you have smallholder farmers. I think I know some people's grandparents who farm rice in the East. It started off as subsistence farming, but they are able to sell to who and how. That's communications, connectivity, enabling them to do that. They start to get through to e-commerce sites. I just really like what has happened in the country right now, that everybody sells something on Instagram, employing young people and then them just being entrepreneurial. Why can't that happen in agriculture? It is happening in some cases, but it can absolutely blow out. Beyond that, we start to look at capability development. How do you develop capabilities for the farmers? Technology is just not the strangest thing ever. But to farmers who are in far remote areas, maybe it might be a little bit of a challenge. So, how do we close those gaps? How do you teach people? I see we've all been taking notes today. Baba said a couple of things. Even I said a couple of things. I learned a couple of things today. And we're all learning. And I think communications, connectivity allows them to learn, allows us to reach them. So I think for me, those are some of the major learnings and major impact from technology. And then what do we do to enable them? Is what I'd even look at a bit more. So yes, we know what it can do, but how do we enable it? I like to think of some of the initiatives that I've gone through in communications. So we had the rural telephony and a number of things. The farmers, smallholder farmers, are in far remote areas. So how do we get infrastructure to them, sustainably, affordable, and make sense? One of the words I think Kudzai said was win-win. It has to be win-win. It has to make sense for everybody. It has to make sense for the farmers, has to make sense for the infrastructure development organizations, and everybody across that value chain. You start to look at devices, services that are available to smallholder farmers. every now and then we sit in here, so everybody has a mobile phone in Nigeria. In fact, everybody has a smartphone. And then instead, when you get down to the figures, you actually see that a lot of the people sitting in here and a lot of people working in VI and in Lagos and in all the cities are the same people recycling a lot of these things. So how do we get devices into their hands? It takes me to the last point that I'll come into, which is partnerships and collaborations. But I mean, we need to get devices affordable and services affordable to them. I'm happy that the Minister of ICT and Digital Economy is here. So these are policies and things which drive it. Baba also talked about policy changes. So we need to be intentional about developing that agriculture, agribusiness ecosystem and enabling all of the farmers. And then obviously, we come into I like to, I've had conversations with people where we talk about, we sit here in our offices, try to work out solutions for farmers in remote areas, and we don't correct for certain things, literacy, languages, and just local nuances. So we need to be speaking to solutions and services that address some of these challenges. And I think most importantly for me is the entire business of partnerships and collaborations which are able to drive them. I mean, I look at the panel here, these really, really fantastic guys here with me. We have Microsoft, we have FCMB, have a number of organizations. Why don't we all just partner together, sit down, collaborate, and see how we can make sense for some of the smallholder farmers in far remote areas? So that for me is, I think, the role that communications and connectivity plays in business of smallholder farmers and also driving sustainability.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Aki. And in fact, your last comment was something that was on my mind that I would bring up in this session in terms of we're talking collaboration and what does that look like for all of you on this panel? How do you come together to address the issues that you're aware of? But before I go into that, I think that what I would like to highlight is from your conversation the importance of collaboration because the issue itself is multifaceted. So you've spoken to one part and that part also affects whatever it is that Mecca is doing in his own ecosystem and what Kudzai is trying to do. So it's important that everybody comes together to understand the part that they need to play. And I'll come to you, Wale. Aki talked about Microsoft, and if I were sat somewhere and somebody said Microsoft and agriculture, I wouldn't see the correlation. So please, I want you to do a great job of educating the audience in we know that technology is fast evolving and we're transition or we are in a digital economy that is fast growing. Can you talk to us about the role that big tech organizations like yours can play in driving a sustainable agribusiness culture or
All right,
future?
thank you so much. I think given the portfolio I cover in Microsoft for financial services, I've had the opportunity to understand the problem His
Fantastic.
Excellency made mention on
Yes.
around the access to lending. But let me start from the beginning.
Okay.
Um, in Microsoft, we have a number of industry practice areas, one of which is agriculture. Within the agriculture sector, we have three fundamental priorities. The first is ensuring that we can enable sustainable farming practices that answer two questions. That one, allow us to increase crop yield and reduce disease, and two, reduce carbon footprint that makes our ecosystem of agricultural producers or anyone who operates within the supply chain eligible for sustainability based financing from European based countries who are really big on ESG. The second area is in value chain management, which is what happens in between production and the end consumer. How do we ensure that we're able to introduce a number of supply chain optimizations in terms of seed storage and preservation, seed transportation, product transportation, yield management, up to the players who work within the supply chain journey, the distribution chain, in such a way that the freshest products can get to the consumer in a timely
Okay.
fashion. The third area is in predictive analytics, which is where our AI investments play a predominant role in terms of helping the aggregators, and I'm using the aggregators specifically in this case to the point he made,
Right.
to empower the aggregators to be able to harness the very complex data points you find
in a farm or in an agricultural produce, because we forget that it's not just what you do in front of the soil or a terminal point that matters. There are a number of things. You need to look at climate, you need to look at seasonality, you need to
Right.
look at soil texture. There are a number of very complex data points that can be overwhelming. And imagine a farmer who is producing rice. He does not have that kind of sophistication. And so we provide the technologies for the aggregators who can deliver it to these people. Now, from a platforming point of view, we realized that that doesn't answer the entire question. And so we started looking into the banks who have the money. And we started to realize that the banks don't want to increase their risk portfolio. They don't, because if I'm giving money to a farmer and I know that by the time I give him money, he's going to marry a second wife, you know, it's not looking
You
good
don't
for our
incentivize.
portfolio. What we started to do was, again, using AI, help these banks build credit risk evaluation models that can allow them profile people to inform their lending decisions faster and automate the process of their SME and digital lending through electronic channels such as SMS banking. Because these people, again, don't have access to sophisticated smartphones, but they can text. So if I'm able to make lending requests to my banking provider through a text message, and a lending and credit decision can be done very quickly based on, through what we've done is, we as Microsoft may not have brought the money to the table, but we've architected the system in such a way
That
that it can
enables.
work. Finally, because there's no more time, is access to market. We started working with the African Union through the Pan African Continental Free Trade Agreement and Zenith Bank in the existing partnership to help build the Africa Trade Gateway to give access to the market.
Why
Because
not?
again, it's one thing for me to produce, but if we want to answer the question His Excellency mentioned in terms of access to market and preventing a situation where we are treated as just raw material producers, but the actual manufacturing and value chain happens in Europe and America, it doesn't help us. And so being able to facilitate that cross-African trade became important to us. And so we're partnering with them to actually build that trade gateway so that on your phone, you can quickly sell your produce in Zambia. If you sell ginger, you can send it to Cameroon. And you can go through the necessary tariffs and custom blockers very, very quickly. So those are the kind of things we encourage organizations like us to pay attention to be enablers of this ecosystem. Thank you.
Fantastic, and a lot of great work that you're doing there. Fantastic solutions. And my question then is, who on this panel have you gone to talk about your solutions? Because it sounds like you solved all the problems. Or when are you going to speak to them about it so that?
Okay. So there is an existing partnership with MTN
Okay.
again on this one. So the gentleman there,
Aki, is this true?
his family.
Okay.
I do agree we need to do more, even
Okay.
even as an organization within the Nigerian. But again, this is where the policies would help. Thankfully, the minister in the strategy that was released for digital economy, we
Yes.
saw digital trade and sustainable financing as a critical pillar. So we know now, at least now, the government is taking this serious. We can put our money here.
Yes.
So I think in the coming periods, you begin to see a lot more investment and expansion and engagement with these aggregators who play in this specialist agri ecosystem.
Fantastic, and I totally agree with you in terms of even the minister and the work that they're doing. You can see that some of the issues that you've touched on appear to be the focus area. So we'll talk about rural connectivity, making sure that everybody sort of has access is what we're working towards. We have very limited time, so I'll just go to my last question for all the panelists. And as we're thinking futuristically, so the theme of this summit is the future of agriculture and how can we build a sustainable agricultural future. If you're uninhibited by the current evidence that exists, all the challenges, etc., and you had to think of a narrative that you want in the future for agribusiness in the future in Nigeria, what is one thing that you believe needs to be in place to allow for that kind of future? And I'll start with you, Aki.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
So the one thing I think would need to be in place is capabilities, knowledge, information across board. Honestly, when Baba talked about how he dealt with birds, with drones in the sky, sitting up for 20 minutes at a time. That is some really, really advanced engineering. I mean, it's simple. My kids have drones and the like, but I would really like to see a place where a farmer in Adamawa, in the far remote area in Adamawa, doesn't see a drone as witchcraft. And at that point, what it means is they've assimilated technology,
Yeah.
they've adopted it, they are able to use it, and they understand how it makes sense for them. That's what I'd really love to see.
Fantastic. Thank you. To you, Kudze.
Yeah, so for me, I believe in Africa, we have been doing the same things all over again and again and achieving the same results. I can give, for example, Babangona. Is, what he didn't tell you is basically a technology company. That's what he is.
Mm.
He's able to use technology to reach the farmers, to coordinate, to do all sorts of things. And his business is now scalable and sustainable. And that, to me, is what is required in Africa. We need to innovate. We need, and with innovation, we will be able to leapfrog and catch up and even overtake everybody else. We now have what I call economies of numbers with what Babangona and other aggregators are doing. The American farmers, they've got huge farms, they've got economies of scale, but if we use technology, we should be able to do and outcompete whoever we are competing because we now have that scale that has been brought by technology. We're talking of seeds. One of my friends, actually, who is a professor at Cornell University, says the seed, the DNA in the seed is actually a software which can be tweaked to produce what you want to do. That's technology. And to me, if we are going to innovate in seed, in mechanization, in finance, we should be able to go very far. As a bank, we have actually have a platform which called banking as a service, where companies like Babangona can plug in and act like a mini bank in there. They are able to open accounts, they are able to transact with their ecosystem that they use. And I believe that's the way to go, and that's the future of Africa. We have to innovate, especially in the ag tech, if we are to survive. Because currently others are now using AI in farming. And if we are not going to innovate, we are going to be left behind for good. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kudze. Over to you, Mecca.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, there's so many things. It's hard to choose one. But I will use this platform to at least pick one that will hopefully fall on good ears with the government representatives here.
Fantastic. Please
So
do.
Babar has talked about the policy somersault that happens. So I'll give you a good example and an example that is not really working. A good example is in 2021, there was a Plant Variety Protection Act that was passed that effectively paved the way for our Dutch partners to really invest in prime agro seeds, because what that did is it gave them security over their intellectual property.
Okay.
Fantastic. Now, the Honorable Minister for Agriculture in Lagos State, she was at a delegation's visit to the Netherlands, where we were looking at horticulture technology, one of which is greenhouses, because we want to also diversify our food sources. And in the south, you need additional technology to grow vegetables. Now, we have a customer who ordered a bunch of greenhouses last year, brought it into the country. It's working well for them, so they ordered a whole bunch that just came into the country, and they paid 20% more on duties,
Wow.
right? So in 6 months, duties has been introduced, so it's costing 20% more for that technology. And yet we say that we want to actually grow vegetables in the south. So I think hopefully that is clear enough that we do need to take a value chain approach to
Yeah.
policy, both from government, from private sector, and collaborate so that we do not inadvertently I'm not saying duty is a bad thing, but it is now
In the
appearing
context
contrary to the signals that investors are getting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you, Wally.
Yeah, so if I was going to pick one thing, I would focus more on ecosystem collaboration as a quick win. I think that in Nigeria today, we have a lot of parallel efforts undergoing that have not been harmonized enough to deliver the outcomes we're looking for. So, for example, I have a belief that the traditional farmer, the traditional SME who is in agri products is not the most digitally savvy person, and it's
Correct.
not necessarily the most educated.
Mhm.
Uh, which means that this individual needs the element of physical touch, which unfortunately many of the aggregators cannot invest in. However, we forget that organizations like the telcos, organizations like the banks have very large footprints across the country, but are still focused on traditional transaction banking services. And these people, these same terminal based services can be leveraged to position what the FCMB boss just mentioned around value added services, where I can go to a POS terminal, and in addition to doing a wallet based and account based transaction, I can apply for a loan. I don't need to know how to use a phone. I just need to be able to speak with an agent in some capacity. And this is a win-win. It's a win-win for a telco who decides to leverage the footprint they have to be utilized for that kind of purpose. It's a win-win for organizations like the central bank who have focused investment vehicles like NIRSAL that is focused on driving this because they can just ride on this kind of banking foot soldiers and telco foot soldiers to penetrate these areas quickly and get that access to financing and access to information in a sustainable manner. So that collaboration needs to happen across these industry stakeholders to work.
Thank you so much. And we have no time left, to be honest. And this conversation could go on for hours because we've only barely scratched the surface, but it's understandable. The issue is multifaceted, it requires multi actors to address. And I think one thing that rings true and consistent is the fact that we need to come together and work together, collaborate, which is something that at different events we keep talking about. It just never really happened. So my hope is that at the next summit, that if we were to have this panel again, we'll be talking about the outcomes of working together, to achieve address some of the challenges that we've talked about today and how we're seeing the impact of those changes. I don't know if we have time for questions from the audience. No? Okay. So in the absence of questions from the audience, I hope that this session has been insightful and illuminating. Thank you to my distinguished panelists. Thank you so much for doing the topic justice. If we had more time, we'll do more. And thank you to a great audience.
Thank you very much. Well done, Chinasa. Panel discussion 2, cultivating technology and driven solutions for agribusiness. Please could our panelists kindly stand so we can take a picture. Could we ask our excellencies to please kindly join them on stage, and then I'll ask the Honorable Minister to please stay on stage. Thank you. So while we wait for that to happen, allow me to acknowledge the presence of Prince Kazim Adio, who is an agribusiness consultant and former commissioner for the environment of Osun State. He was also the former Secretary of State for Osun State. So welcome, sir. Lucky to have you with us. And Honorable Olayato Aribo, the Honorable Commissioner for Agriculture, Ondo State, representing the Executive Governor of Ondo State. Welcome. We're very happy to have you with us and have you in our midst. Don't forget to smile for the picture. Where's Dr. Toyosi? Is she not joining this picture? And Ogene Voke and Temi Dire, you should be on stage right now.